Shalom, everyone. Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the house of the Lost Sheep of Israel. And today we're going to be going through a pretty interesting lesson today. And what I want to do is, before we dive deep into it and get the understanding on what's going on, I was approached about last week where my words was misconstrued or something happened, but they wanted to say that based on some teaching, I said that a marriage is a partnership. Partnership is a marriage. So what I'm going to do, we're going to get some real good understanding today, because what I'm going to define today, and I'm going to show you according to scripture on how everything actually works out, and show you how the world sees it as how the Bible sees it. Saying this, I'm going to show you how partnerships work. I'm going to show you how prenuptial agreements work. And I'm going to show you how putting last name hyphenations work. Because this is what is actually going on today. And we need to find out, what is God seeking? So I need to be a little bit more clear about what I said, as well as I'm going to play. There's going to be about a 10-minute clip that I want to play. This is actually really the only clip, but I want you to see the clip. In the clip, I want you to pay real close attention to everything I say. And at any time, tell me if I say a marriage and I'm defining a marriage as a partnership, or I'm saying, are people treating marriage as a partnership? So let's not play with words. Because if I'm saying a marriage is a partnership, then that's what I said. But if I say people treat marriage as a partnership, they're saying something else. And when you hear those and people sit there and say that one or the other, and they quote it wrong or they push it out to people wrong, then technically what they're doing, they pushing out a lie. They're pushing out a total lie. And I'm here to be more clear. So I'm here to define everything, to show you now where everything comes from, to where we can all understand what is going on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to gear this one video up. And I want you to see the video. And with the video, we're going to understand what happened and where it's coming from. And we're going to look at that, and then we're going to go back, and then we're going to define a lot of stuff, go through the lesson, and it'll help all women, even men. Later, you're going to see at the end to where, well, you're going to even see in the middle, if people looking to get into partnerships, if they looking to hyphenate their names and everything else, this is going to help you determine all that as a whole. So let's look at the video, and then we'll come back and we'll get started. And we're going to look at this, and then we're going to get into some things. We're going to look at verse 35. Verse 35, and find out something more so what happened in here. Verse 35. And it tells us this. It says, "Thus said the Creator, which have given the sun for light by day, including the ordinances of the moon, including the stars for light by night." These ordinances is given by God. How they could run, how they come up, what time they come up, what time they go down, how they do everything, he controls that. And he gave them the ordinances of it. He said, "Which divided the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Creator of hosts is his way." He's telling you right up front. But he says more here. He says, "Providing those ordinances depart from me." Providing those ordinances depart from me, saith the Creator. Then the seed of Israel shall cease from being a nation before me. The reason that's so important, because just like I said, most people think they're in a partnership when they should have been in a marriage. So in Romans chapter 9, and picking it up at verse 6, this is why it makes it very clear to us in better understanding. Because they like to change the ordinances. It says, not as though the word of God is taking none effect, for they are not all Israel. Because everybody's not Israel. I don't care. You got people in Israel think they're Israel, and they're not Israel, which are of Israel. No, you're still not Israel. Still don't make you Israel at all. Just because you, I'm Israel. No, don't make you Israel. In fact, when we look at this and get down into verse 37, it gets a little bit more. And we'll pick that up at verse 37. It says, thus says the Creator, if heaven can be measured and the foundations of the earth be searched beneath, I will also cast off the seed of Israel. For all that they have done, saith the Creator. So he's saying he'll do it. He'll do this. But the thing is, this is our problem. This is a personal problem that we actually have. In Isaiah chapter 24, makes it a little bit, helping us a little bit more. And he tells us this. It says, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, broken the everlasting covenant. That's what we have done. We changed everything. We changed these things. We have changed these things because we feel we're in a partnership. No, I'm not going to do this. No, you do this. No. We're going to get this. We're going to take care of some business. We're going to take care of this. We're going to do this. Partnership. Like you're in a partnership. That's craziness. So the same thing is as people sitting there. And people sit there and say, yeah, before you get married, make sure you take care of business. Okay, one, if any church teach you in that way, they taught you 100% wrong. I don't care how you look at it, flip it, script it, whatever. They told you wrong. They told you, oh yeah, well, you take care of business first. Really? That's interesting. It's highly interesting. How you going to take care of business first so you're looking at a partnership? A partnership. Because a marriage is according to God. So your contract is in there. And what goes on. Not taking care of business according to what you guys say. And the reason that's so interesting is this here. And people sit there, oh no, this and that. So if you don't agree with it, you don't have to. Because you just don't agree with God. Because it's telling you right there. It's telling you right there exactly what a marriage is. But that's why I say a lot of people are not going to see it, and a lot of people are going to miss it, based on their own self-will and what they believe, and thinking they can mix and match the Word of God. In Daniel chapter 7, picking it up at verse 25. And Daniel says, he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, including think to change times and laws. And they shall be given unto his hand until the time and the dividing of times. This is going to happen. This is happening today. Because of the same thing is what we have done. We have broke the covenant with God. And now we just changed everything to a partnership, and we fulfill this 100% over here. And then we exemplify those same things in flesh. It says, in that day, 7 women should take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. That's what we do today. That's what we do today. It's not a marriage. It's a partnership. And it gets more so as we look at this a little bit deeper. We're going to go a little bit deeper and just get a better understanding on finding out what's going on. Because what I want to show you is the example with Jacob. I want to show you the example with Jacob, because what we're doing, we want to hold on to flesh, and we have even women and what they want to do. They come into a marriage, and most of them they get this down. Well, won't tell you what, I still gonna keep my maiden name. I'm gonna hyphenate my name. I'm gonna hyphenate it because I'm my father. I was the only daughter, and so I'm gonna keep his name. Or I like that name. I'm gonna keep that name. Then it goes back down to it again. Why did you marry? Because the same thing is, we want to look at this, and you can see all your legal technicalities. Everything is in Scripture. Everything. I don't care what you. So that's why people sit there. Oh well, no, it says that. No, it's not going to change, because when people sit there and they do this, are they in sin? Hyphenating names. It's hyphenating the name of sin. Simple. That's a simple question. Is hyphenating names a sin? Let's go to work. Let's do a little bit of work real quick. And I want to show you something just that's interesting, because most times when I tell people and I ask a question, I'm leading you somewhere because I want you to see something after you say it. And first I want you to answer it. That's why I normally do that. I want you to answer it first before I actually show you what is actually happening. In Genesis chapter 32, and we're going to look at this in verse 28, we're going to see something that happened with God and Jacob. And he told Jacob this. He says, and he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, no more according to this flesh, because we're not going to sit there and you're going to be called Jacob. He says, but Israel. He didn't say your name going to be Jacob Israel. He didn't hyphenate it. It says, for comparing a prince has thy power with God and with men. So he's saying, so under God's eyes, you're going to be seen as Israel, and under men's eyes, you're going to be seen as Israel, because now you're going to have power with me and with men, for thou hast prevailed. Clear. And he's telling you something together, because most of us miss this again. Called. See, this is what I say. We can't let stuff slip by us. We got to keep everything together, but some of us let this slip. And he's telling you what it is. Called. And spiritually, called is together named. So he was saying, this is why we don't let these ways get past us, but we do. And he's telling us, he says, thy way shall be called, together named, together the way of no more Jacob. You ain't doing that way no more. Not the way of man, no, but Israel. Now this is clear. You see, this is why he's saying these things. So together, when people are sitting there, they want to hyphenate, do these things, they actually is in a partnership and not in a marriage. Because you have many people in a marriage and they like to hyphenate their names. Are they in sin? Yes. They're trying to serve two masters. They want to stay associated with the world, not associated with the ways of God. So they try to associate themselves away to the world. In fact, we'll see this here again. And people will sit there and say different things. And in the same thing, you see this in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, picking it up at verse 15. It says this. In 15, he tells you. It says, know ye not that your bodies are the members of Christ? He's asking this question. Shall I then take the members, the members of Christ, and make them members with an harlot, with another flesh? God forbid. No. So, wait a minute. So we see here what was going on. And you can also see where I never defined a marriage as a partnership, but you do see some people. It was a couple of people who sit there and said, I said yes. So if they sit there holding to that, those are the same type of people you wouldn't want to be on your jury if you're in court, because I never said it. But for some reason, they said I said it. And at no time I said it. So it could be the people who said it, who said I said it, could have been marked that. But you can see there clearly, I never said that. And I can play it time and time and time again and show it to you. I never said it. I said, but people were treated as one. So, but it just goes to let you know how people will sit there and lie. Because the same one saying I said it, still, no matter what, they still lied. Because I never said it. So let's go in here. Let's look at this, and we're going to start getting defining some things to where we can get the understanding. Because what's going on here is where people will believe, believe or try to make something that is not. And most people do it because they want to push their own doctrine, their own ways in doing things. So we need to see the difference between, the Bible, how people try to make the Bible fit their lifestyle, and not their lifestyle try to fit the Bible. And how people, you even see it here, people lying, saying I said something, you heard it yourself and I never said it. So that just shows you how people will hold to a doctrine of lies. And this is clear right there. Because one, a marriage, and people will treat marriages as partnership. And what they do. So we got to get into this. We got to look at this and see how this is going on. So we need to start. And we're going to look at this, and then we're going to get into some things. To understand more. Look at verse 35. To do. Verse 35. Find out something more. So what happened in here? 1 second. Verse 35. Wrong place. Wrong place. Wrong one. Wrong one. Sorry about that. So, and what we want to do, we want to look at this and see what is going on with everything that is there. We want to see everything that is going on there to find out what's going on. So what we want to do, we want to look at this, and what we want to do is get understanding on how this actually works out and how everything is seen. So we need to see the viewpoint, and we need to understand, one, the understanding of partnerships and what the viewpoint of partnerships is. And we're going to look at this and find out everything about it and what's going on there. So now within this viewpoint of two individuals is what a partnership is. An understanding of two individuals is a partnership. And what they do, they want to marry, but what is the partnership? So I'm going to be showing you some examples and showing you how this works. And so what the initial steps is vital to comprehend what is a partnership and how one can actually even try to work with a teacher. So if you had a child and you had a child go to a school and you sit there and you want to work with the teacher to help your child, then you're going to go into a partnership to where you guys work together to help educate the child. Partnership, same thing. So it's the same thing, but it's different when you're trying to form a partnership and you're trying to be a wife or a husband. That's impossible. That's craziness. That's why I said right here, where people sitting there saying, I said something, that's craziness. But that shows you people can hear what they want to hear. So a partnership is an error in marriage. And I want you to write that down. So keep notes, and I want you to write stuff down because this is going to help you even later, or even educate you for your child or for your son or for your daughter. So we got to see what the errors are in a partnership. And some partnership in marriages may be defined, may be identified. And this is how they really identify them. And it's identification of independence. Independence. Partnership. It's the same thing as a partner can pick green, the other partner gonna pick blue. I don't care how you do it. They can say something is turquoise and the other one is something else. I don't care how you do it. No matter what, they're going to make sure this is always going through. And I see somebody saying they voted incorrectly. If you didn't know how to vote, then you shouldn't have voted. That's the best thing you should have did. If you don't know how to vote correctly, then you shouldn't have never voted. But the poll is done. But the thing is, what you want to do is first understand how this contractually works. How it contractually works. Because it demonstrates that a partnership, they have equal stake, or they define their stakes within the partnership. Some have 50-50, some have 60-40, some have 70-30, some have 80-20, some have 90-10. It's a partnership. It can determine how much money is in it. It could determine how much position you're going to have. Going to determine how much authority you're going to have within the partnership. And this is within a marriage that they define as a partnership, but they're saying they're being married. So I heard a pastor where said this pastor was sitting there and he's telling people how to get ready to get married. And he said the first thing people need to do is take care of business first. Take care of business first. And he's encouraging people to form these type of relationship. And it's really a partnership and it's not a marriage. But you have preachers telling people to do this. That's 100% foolishness. It's ignorance on the pastor's behalf. To tell people, we're going to show you how, and I'm going to show you scripturally all what I'm saying. So that's why I want to show you when you put heirs in partnership, then I'm going to show you what it is in 1 second on how you actually see it in scripture. And it's going to define the identical thing. And when you have preachers telling people this, they're telling you 100% in error, telling you to take care of business first, and they trying to tell you how to form a partnership and not a marriage at all. So they can form it in one who earns the most money controls the partnership, depending on the partnership. And if he found the money and invested, then he may invest as little as he choose in the partnership, or he invest as much as he choose in the partnership. But it's based on the stipulation of both of them that was in the partnership. Excuse me. So both the investment, and if people want to do 50-50, then it's based on the monetary, based on within the partnership. If one putting in 50,000, the other one putting in 50,000, it's 50-50. If one putting in 60 or 75,000, the other one putting in 25,000, you can see where it started going off base. But what happened is the workload in the agreements of unfair contribution begins to kick in because disagreement can arise based on the scalings of within the partnership. Treating the marriage as a business, taking care of business first, and not looking at what's going on here. So any preacher or any elder or any person that's called himself in the position of teaching you the word of God and they telling you to take care of business first, he in 100% error. 100% error. Telling you that. And what you want to do, we're going to look at the contrast of this and what you want to see in scripture. Do it define taking care of business and saying things like that, determining what you're going to do, what's required of her and what's required of the man, what's required of financial, what's required of who's going to do what. So that we should find out in scripture. So we want to look at this and we're going to see how this contrasts in what the Bible teaches us on a marriage. So I want to invite you over we're going to look at Genesis. We're going to go to Genesis. And we're going to look at chapter 24, but we're going to pick it up at verse 1. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. And we're going to look at this, and it makes sure, and it's not trying to lead you into something, but what we want to do, we want to look at the contrast based on a partnership and based on how Bible going to define the marriage. That's what we want to find. So we need to see the contrast between the two. Is God going to define it the same way men tell you to take care of business first? And it says, and Abraham was old and was well stricken in age, including the Spirit of God had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant, who was Eliezer, in the house that ruled over all that he had, put, I pray thee, hand under thy thigh. That's what he's telling him. So we want to see what's going on here. And he said, I will make thee swear by the Spirit of God, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, and thou shalt take no wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. And he's going to define some things here. He says, and thou shalt go unto my country, including to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son, Isaac. So now this agreement is going on between Abraham and Eliezer, and what he wants Eliezer to do for Isaac. And you can see where he's sending him there. And what we want to remember is he's sending him to his country. Now, we're going to find out even later, because we're going to move forward on this. And we're going to see, is he doing business as what we're going to see? He's going to conduct business as what people tell you or what preachers tell you, or we're going to see, is he going to conduct a marriage as God? So we're going to look at this. And we're going to pick this up a little. We're going to go down a little bit. We're going to go down to verse 34. So we're in 24, but let's scroll down a little. We're going to pass up some of this, but you can go back and read this and you can see what happened, because this is just a lot of intel information on what happened. So we're just picking it up. We're going to look at verse 34. And Eliezer, he's speaking, he said, I am Abraham's servant. But watch what goes on here. So we're going to go cruise all the way down to 58. But we want to find out what happened based on who he's talking to, because we need to understand who he went to. And we're going to remember a couple of things on what happened here. But we're going to cruise all the way down to 58, but we're going to read that as we go forward. It says, and the Lord have blessed my master greatly, and he is become great. He had given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and men servants and maid servants and camels and asses. And then he says even more in 36, and we'll see here, he says, and Sarah, my master's wife, bare a son, and my master, when she was old, and unto him hath he given all that he hath. He says, and my master made me swear, saying, thou shalt not take a wife to my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, in whom the land I dwell. But thou shalt go unto my father's house in my kindred, and take a wife unto my son. And I said unto my master, peradventure, the woman will not follow me. So he's asking him, but if the woman won't follow him, because he asked Abraham that, if he won't follow him, you're going to see what's going to happen. And he said unto me, the Spirit of God, before whom I walk, will send his messenger, his angel, with thee, and prosper thy way. And thou shalt take a wife for my son and my kindred in my father's house. Then shall thou be clear of this oath, when I cometh into my kindred, and if they give not thee one, thou shalt be clear of my oath. And I came this day unto the well, and said, O Spirit of God, of my master Abraham, if thou do prosper my way, which I go, remember I stand before the well of water. And it shall come to pass that when the virgin cometh forth to draw water, and say to her, give me, I pray, a little water of thy pitcher to drink. She should say, drink, both drink thou, and I will draw for thy camels. And let the same be that woman, the woman whom the Spirit of God have appointed out for my master's son. And before I had done speaking in my heart, remember Rebekah. That's talking about who he's talking about, who he's seen. Rebekah came forth with a pitcher on her shoulder, and she went down unto the well and drew the water. And I said unto her, let me drink, I pray thee. She made haste and let down her pitcher from her shoulder and said, drink. And I will give thy camels drink also. So I drank, and she made the camels drink also. And I asked her, I said, whose art thou? That's the key. Whose art thou? She said, I'm the daughter of Bethel, Nahor's son. Nahor is Abraham's brother. And she said, whom Milcah bare unto him, and I put the earring upon her face and the bracelets upon her hands, and bowed down my head and worshiped the Spirit of God, and blessed the Spirit of God of my master Abraham, which had led me in the right way to take my master's brother's daughter. He knew exactly who he's dealing with now, unto his son. He says, now if thou deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. If not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban, now Laban is Rebekah's brother, which we're going to find out, so put that keys in your pocket again. He says, Laban, the thing proceeded from the Spirit of God. We cannot speak unto thee good or bad. Remember, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Spirit of God has spoken. We don't see she gonna pay the light bill. She gonna do this. You don't see that there, do you? But we're gonna keep on moving forward. And he said, and he came to pass, and that Abraham's servant heard the words, and he worshipped the Spirit of God, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels and silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. And he gave also to her brother and her mother precious things. And they did eat and drink, and he and the men that were with him, and tarried all night, and rose up in the morning. And he said, send me away unto my master. And her brother and her mother said, let the damsel abide with us a few days. So he said, we're gonna keep Rebekah a couple of days, and at least 10. After that, she shall go. And he said unto them, hinder me not, seeing the Spirit of God has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, we will call the damsel. We're going to call Rebekah. We're going to see what Rebekah going to do. We're going to call her and inquire at her mouth. And they called Rebekah and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? You going to go with him? And she said, I will go. Now she haven't met Isaac at any point at this time. All she met was Abraham's servant. But we building up to which we seeing what a marriage is. It's not something about what they're going to take care of here and what they're going to take care of there. But Jacob is the son of Rebekah. Is the son of Rebekah. And Rebekah became Isaac's wife on sight. He brought her into the house and she became his wife. And from that union came Esau and Jacob. And we got to remember, Laban was Rebekah's brother. But let's pick up from there. We're going to see again another silhouette picture. We're going to pick it up in Genesis chapter 29, and we're going to start at verse 1. We're going to look at this again. It says, and Jacob went on his journey into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, it was a field, it was a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of the well watered the flock, and the great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth. But we got to see what's getting ready to go on. So it said this, and Jacob, he's out there. And Jacob said unto them, my brethren, be ye? And he said, of Haran we are. And he said unto them, know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? That's Rebekah's brother. Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they're going to tell you right up front. And he said unto them, first they said, we know him. He said unto them, is he well? They said, he's well. And remember Rachel, his daughter, cometh with the sheep. Those are Laban. That's Laban's daughter. And she's coming. But let's see, now Jacob actually meets her. But let's see what business worked out with this. So let's move down again. We're going to go down to verse 16, and we're going to get a little bit more information. And we're going to pick it up at 29:16. And Laban had 2 daughters. The elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. So we know he had 2 daughters. Telling us right here, and it's clear. But we need to find out what happened and what was going to go on and see was business going to be worked out. So we're going to take this down and we're going to jump in 2 spots. It says, and Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored, and Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. I'll work for you for 7 years. I want this one. Nothing transpired, have it? We still don't see that there, based on the world. So we see this, and we're going to go down to it. Laban said, it is better I give her to thee, which you're talking about Leah, then I should give her another man abide with me. But watch what he says. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. He served 7 years for Rachel. And they seemed unto him but a few days, for he loved he had for her. So let's move down a little bit, because you're going to see he served him for 7 years, but it didn't work out the way Jacob wanted it. He ended up going into Leah. So Leah he ended up marrying. But we're gonna see what's gonna happen as we pick this up. And you go down and we're gonna pick this up in verse 26. And Laban said, "It must not be done so in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn." He said, "Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for service." So I give her for service. Ain't really talking about marriage. He said, "I'm gonna just give her for service. That's what I'm gonna pay you. I'm gonna pay you with her for service. And thou shalt serve me yet another 7 years." So we see what's going on. But it gets better. See, the rule in becoming one is what the case is. So we need to see the key is business. I want you to keep that in mind. The key is business. Or is it business? The key is business. So I'm going to show you something. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 49. We're going to look at verse 29. And we're going to see a couple of things. The key is this here. And he charged him and said, "I am to be gathered unto my people, and bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite." And this is Jacob and them talking about what he wants to do, which he's at his name is already changed to Israel. He's saying, but this is what's going to happen. He's making this completely clear. And as he went down and he's telling them what was going to happen, he's making sure what they need to do. But watch what goes on here in verse 31. It says, "There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife." And is he saying he want to be buried there? But there they buried Leah. She was buried there. So why is this so much of a key on what's going on? Because when you're looking at this, and we want to understand something, when we want to look at things in a chronological or understanding way, you see at no time so far where they talking about the business of the world. You haven't seen that thus far. Because the rule is, it's not a partnership, it's a marriage. It's two people becoming one. Two people becoming one, not two entities. And this is where we have a problem at. In fact, we're going to look at something to help out, and then I'm going to show you some examples even better. In Ruth chapter 1, we're going to look at verse 16. And we're going to find out a couple of things here. It says, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. Where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God." Most people don't know why that's said and why she's saying it that way, and they sitting there thinking she's saying that just based on something else. But this is actually being said on two things. See, the only thing could separate her from God is God. See, she was separated according to the flesh of her husband because she was married to Milian. But with Milian, that was just according to the flesh. But she was always married to God because she took on his God. This is what she's telling you right here. So if she took on his God, she's on the same boat as Naomi. The same identical boat. Both of them husbands died. So if both husbands died, now she's telling her, "Hey, entreat me not to return there, because whether I go, I'm going. I'm on the same boat you on. Where I lodge, I lodge. Thy people followers of Christ, they my people. Your God, Jehovah, my God." And what you got to remember, even what Ruth's name actually mean. See, because Ruth's name means thy companion. Beautiful spiritual name. Beautiful name. Thy companion. And we look at this and we see in the function of that because she's not loose from the law of her husband, Christ. She understood this. She's not loose from that. Because only in death do they part. And it's telling you right there. You see here, right here, where she tells you this in verse 17. She says, and where thou diest, I will die. And there I will be buried. The Spirit of God so to me, including more so, if I ought, but death part thee in me. I'm talking about that's deep. Only thing gonna part her from following God is death. I want you to think of, I'm talking about she's the Spirit of God so do so to me, including more so. If aught but death part thee in me. I'm talking, that's a mic dropper. That's the only thing gonna separate it from following Christ. She's saying, hey, I'm with you. I'm with you. And we got to look at this and see, understand more why he even saying this and why she even said it this way. Because when we looking at, when you stand and you stay connected to flesh and you stand separated and it's not going to work. Because we got to look at how the husband of Christ, he never dies. Never dies. The same with these people you look at. But people like to do these things, and people like to do the things of the world. This is where we get into the problem. Because people in the world, they see things completely different. See, your brothers and your sisters and your fathers and your mothers and your friends play a big role in altering the rules that's recorded in Ruth. They alter that. Because what they'll do, no matter what, they want you to be respect to flesh and hold to their people than to hold to God and hold to Christ. That's why she said, hey, I got to go where you going. I'm following Christ. You following Christ, I'm following Christ. Let's look at this. Let me show you more so what I'm talking about to help you out a little bit more and why we have this problem. In the problem that we're going to find out more so as we get deeper into it. We're going to find this in Sirach. And Sirach, we're going to go to chapter 40. In 40 and 23, I want you to think about this and as we go through this. And pin this down, it says, a friend, including companion, never meet amiss. And I want you to understand what the never meet amiss. And meet is to find, and amiss is to commit any iniquity, any wrong, or any doings, anything sinful towards this person. That's what those two mean. To meet, to find, or you find them never doing anything amiss. That's a friend and that's a companion. A friend and a companion. You'll never find them doing anything wrong being a friend. They'll never be doing anything wrong being your companion. And there's a key here. He says, but above both is a wife with her husband. Wow. So with a friend and a companion is a wife with her husband. That's showing you how close knit shouldn't nothing come between that. Which we're going to be getting to some other stuff in a second. But this is not always the case. This is not always the case. And the reason why this is not the case, because sometimes, and many times, companions and a friend that they say, in the case some will always have their friends, their family, and others, they'll place them and seek them, and they really were seeking a partnership or seeking a partnership agreement or hyphenations. Let me show you what I mean, and to where we can get a better understanding on this. A better understanding on what we need to go into. We're going to find this again in Sirach in chapter 6. And look at this, and we're going to go down to verse 10. And we already see what's happening here. It says again, some friend is a companion at the table, and will not continue in that day of thy affliction. It's not going to happen. And affliction can be plagues or humiliation or ill treatment by other people. They won't continue. They're going to always side with their friend. I don't care what you go through. They're going to side with them. They're going to always go with that position over there because they want to show they have alliance there. This is what goes on. But you see, they shouldn't never commit those type of things. But the same thing is, what it tells you is saying like with the husband or wife, but if you have a partnership, the partnership don't work on alliance. The partnership don't work on a league. The partnership don't work on a union. The partnership is what it is. It's defined. So ill will, ill treatment, all these things can happen, and it don't have anything to do with you. That's the key. In fact, to pour down a little bit more here. We're going to go right back to Sirach. We're going to go back to Sirach, and we're going to go to chapter 37. We're going to pick it up at verse 2. It says, is it not grief unto death when a companion, including friend, is turned to an enemy? Wow. See, we get ready to find out some few things, because this is what happens. See, companion and friend that you think that you have is really your enemy. And the companion is based on a relationship of their true friends on what they're going to have with you within that partnership. So the marriage that people will call a marriage, and they based on that, based on the companionship and the friendship, and based on the relationship that they have, they're really in a partnership, and it's not really a marriage. Remember Ruth? Where you go, I go. Where you lodge, I lodge. Thy people, followers of Christ, my people. Where thou diest, I die. What I bury, I bury. Keep that in mind. Because a friend is a companion, never meet amiss. But above both is a wife with her husband. And this is why it's so hard to make people see stuff, because they want life to fit their way. So is your wife or your husband really your companion as a friend, or just an alliance, or somebody you just really in a partnership? If your husband or your wife is dead, the only thing then, as long as you live, you still under the law of your husband, which is Christ. Because some people is married under a partnership. which is nothing more than a breeding ground for hate. You have stress and emotional things anchors you down, and with the relationship it is stressful nightmares and people going against each other. You can sit there, one person can be saying they're in a marriage and they sitting there, the one person in a financial burden, and they sit there and you stay in that burden because you're in a partnership. You create time to where you have time to go do things from what you want to go do with your friends, with your people. It's a partnership. Same way you go vacation, do things what you want to do. Remember Ruth? Where you go, I go. Where you lodge, I lodge. But a partnership, no, I'm scheduling, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go do that. Partnership. And when you try to look at the additional responsibility, because then other things with that partnership, you can have additional responsibility that can come unknowingly in the partnership. And the same thing, like within this partnership, you encounter a pregnancy. Interesting. Pets. That's putting responsibilities, and the partnership need to be structurally changed for this growing family. Becomes in jeopardy based on the variables and the influence of other people outside the partnership giving you counsel. Interesting, isn't it? Because what's happening here, we have the term, and we look at these things, and we look at like things, and what they should have looked at was like prenuptial agreements. Actually called as uniform, it's the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act is what it actually is, which was actually created back in 1983. The first known prenuptial agreement, which is legally enforceable agreement that's made between a couple before they married. Partnership agreement. But within there, it details what goes where, who has what. It's partnership. They just call it a prenuptial agreement. But is that according to God? No. It's a partnership. You going in already with the outlook if it don't work out, as with a business. You're already with that outlook. If it protecting what's yours in case of a divorce, ensuring what property you have is yours. Prenuptial agreements. And these is based on these limited type partnerships. Technically an LLC. Which means even if you are wrongfully accused or you're accused of something, within this partnership, it doesn't matter. What's yours is yours, what's theirs is theirs. A prenuptial agreement in your assets is not considered marital property. Remember, it's looked at as personal property. Partnership. And we go through this, and it must contain within that partnership, it tells you clear statements within this parties and their parties' intentions. So many people today in America especially, get married today using prenuptial agreements. That's one of them. And it can make it really complicated for protection, but making it more clear that anyone is saying they are married and they're not married, they're actually under a prenuptial agreement. They're not married. They're under a prenuptial agreement. Now, the same thing. We have people who like to hyphenate. Hyphenations. See, this is where a lot of people have a problem with. Hyphenations. We're going to look at some samples and show you what's going on there. And because people look at hyphenations and they think hyphenations is something to where they thinking they protecting something or they thinking they doing something, but hyphenations in America, you can actually even go check it. Hyphenations are actually disrespecting the husband. Most people don't even know that. In America, that's their way to where they can disrespect and they can show their women feminism. This is what they do. So we need to look at this differences in the connection line. We need to look at the differences in the connection line. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna pull something up, and we're gonna look at something. And I already preset some things up. And I want you to see something, to see how this actually works. And we're gonna find out how some things work here with these hyphenations. Hyphenations. And let's say her last name is Gibson and his last name is Tyson. You see it right here. They got them right there. His last name is Tyson. Her last name is Gibson. So what Gibson like to do is once she get married, she want to hyphenate. We're going to deal with that. That's what we're going to look at. That's what we want to understand. So how is this connection line works? And what you see right here is, sister-in-law. I want you to pay attention to this. Sister-in-law. It's a line. But the sister-in-law don't go to her. It actually goes to him. Because them two getting married has no effect on her at all. It's no effect to her. It only affects this one. As with her brother, as with this brother, they become to him brother-in-laws. Hyphenations need to be made clear to determine who these parties are. The connection. And the same thing here, what should have happened there is that should have been eliminated. And it just should have said Tyson. Because it's two becoming one as a union. That's the catch between the two. So it shouldn't have been no hyphenation there, because if it's a hyphenation there, now it's just a partnership. It's a business relationship. The same as you see with the sister-in-law. It's his sister-in-law, the same as his brother's-in-law. It don't change any of the structure between these brothers to her or the sister to her. It only shows to where now it's a connection showing you when he speaks, he's speaking to a in-law. The hyphenation structure. Though Tyson is married to her, and though she's married to him, but they come together, and they come together as one. Hyphenations is just used to show connections. You see them, and you see them in the Bible all the time. Hyphenations show connections to things. They're not structured to show marriages to anything. They only show connections to what you need to see. Not to show a marriage between a man and a woman at all. The same as people use these hyphens, but they like to use them in connection with these agreements. And that's why most people sit there. That's why I was showing you when you looked at the outcome, when you looked at the sample on the front. That's why you see when they came into the house of Johnny Cochran's law firm, it don't say Johnny Cochran and somebody else. You're coming under his umbrella. Under the other one, you'll see connections to others. So people want to understand what is the advantages of women even hyphenating their names. And some of them even in the hyphenating names, and what are the hopes of even getting married? See, women hyphenate their names, and they truly even believe that hyphenating their name is freely And what they do, they can freely use to what they will do. And most people don't know it, but what they do, hyphenate the name. Then they just, if they want to tell people, oh yeah, my name is still John Doe. Okay, they're not saying John Doe Tyson. They're just saying John Doe, and that's what they know him by. It's an advantage point for them, showing that they're not really married or it's not beneficial to them at the time when they tell you that. Many will refer to their maiden name. And as I said, you can check it. Even women who hyphenate their last names is actually an insult to a husband. And with that, you have issues with it, which we're going to see in a minute. But you have disadvantages also, hyphenating the last name. See, women hyphenate their last name. You can also see, even in the workforce, women who use hyphenated names is the one least to be promoted to most high positions, unless they created the company themselves, because they based on feminists. And most men, and even most women, take it as a disrespect. So when women seek to get those positions, and they're looking for those positions such as that, that's why most people won't put them in those positions, because their names is hyphenated. It's a disrespect. Even when you look in the entertainment industry, the same thing. You can see, actually, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to show you something. And you'll see this here. I'm going to show you something here. You see this one here. Beyonce and Jay-Z. And her name is Beyonce Knowles Carter. Hyphenated. Hyphenated. But people deal with her limitedly because of the hyphenation. See, she tries to build on that, but it's a little bit harder for her to do that. And you have this one here. You have Jada Pinkett Smith. But you'll see, her name is not hyphenated. She freely pretty much runs Hollywood the way she wants. She have shows running, movies running. She has a lot of stuff going on with her. Most people don't know this, but you have even like your Olivia Newton-John's hyphenated name. Some of your most famous people, when they hyphenate their names, it puts them at a limit because they come off as a feminist. It's showing to where you really untrustworthy, because you can come in and use one name, and then sometimes you'll come in under another name. And you can see women do this, and even where the men did these things, it's what God joined together, not what man joined together, what God joins together. And you'll see these things, and you'll see what happened. Actually, I'm going to show you something to make sure we clearly get what I'm talking about, to where we can understand what I'm talking about there. And I'm going to show you here in a couple of things on what we do. In Exodus chapter, we're going to look at Exodus chapter. Actually, let's go to Genesis. We'll go to Genesis 22. Because I'll show you in a couple of places. Genesis 22. We're going to pick it up at verse 14. I'm going to show you something that happened here. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, hyphenated. Hyphenated. But who joined that? Man joined that. And it can be separated. Man joined that together. Abraham. You'll see that again here, which I was going to take you. Exodus in chapter 17. You'll see verse 15. You'll see it again. Moses built an altar and called the place Jehovah Nasi. Hyphenated. Hyphenated. Gideon did the same thing, and you'll see that in Judges. In Judges chapter 6 and verse 24. You'll see the same identical thing there. In verse 24, you're going to see this here. Gideon built this altar and unto the Spirit of God and called it Jehovah Salom. But these are what men has joined together, and they can be separated. They can be separated. It's different because that's the point of the hyphenation, because they can be shown separate. Some people are going to call it that, and some people are going to call it something else. Those same places. But it's different when you're dealing with God. See, God said something, and it's set in stone. He said it, and it's a different thing. You'll see this here, and you're going to see where he joined something together also. We'll see this in Genesis 32, and we're going to pick it up at verse 28. And he said, and this is what God speaking to, he said, thy name should be called no more Jacob. I'm not going to call you Jacob, but Israel. You don't see a hyphenation. I'm not going to call you Jacob Israel. I'm going to call you Israel. For as a prince, thou shalt have power with God and with men. God joined to one. No hyphenation. Can't no man separate this. Man is not capable of separating this here. That's the point. On what we do, on what you seen Moses and Abraham and Gideon did, men can separate that. But what God done cannot be separated because it's settled. These things are settled in heaven. And when they settled in heaven that way, you cannot separate it. And he tells you, it makes clear this all the time. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 6, it says, wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God had joined together, let no man put us under. We can separate all we want to do today. God put something together. You can't separate it. Hyphenations does that. Did you know the divorce rate is higher with hyphenated marriages than non-hyphenated ones? The rate is actually 63% higher. Most people don't even know this. And we go through this consistently because women want to find ways to keep their names. And when they do that for different ways. See, hyphenating names represents a whole different ball game. And they refuse to tell people. And what they don't want you to see is how they do things. They represent their own identity. They have their own identity on what they do. They don't want to use their name. A semblance with their husband identity. Feminists is what they believe in. More than 40% of women today seek to get married with hyphenated names, and then to where it allows them to go back and forth. But you see more and more people is not being married because of that same conception of hyphenation names. The same reason for that. Because what they do, they look at these partnerships. It's a business. It's a partnership. So people sit there and say, well, partnership and prenuptial agreement is two different things. No, it's one and the same. Within a partnership, you just define the same thing in the prenup. They're nothing but glorified partnerships, hyphenations, and the same with prenups. The Bible says this, and show you something here. And just to make sure we're clear on this, Isaiah we want to look at chapter 4. And we'll see this here. The same thing, it says, in that day 7 women should take hold of one man, saying, we'll eat our own bread. We'll wear our own apparel. Let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. That's it. See, women seek to get in those positions, and they seek to be married. They seek to do these things, but they want to get there their way. They want to get there their way. I know many people have heard this same statement, and I said it a few times. They'll tell you where they'll be in this position. They'll say, a happy wife is a happy life. Saying, if they not on top, life is hell. If I'm not on top, I can make your life a living hell. You have, even in Japan, in certain parts of Japan, required married couples to share the same last name. It's required because of the issue that it can cause. But the thing here is push, and it's really push within the black people. So while it's sitting there, and you see some places, then it becomes necessarily to where some places they even hold it that it's illegal to even do it. Women even run into legal issues doing that. Because they're looking for a partnership, and they're not looking for something other than that than what it is. No other than what it is. This is part of the problem. This is what's going on here. Because of what happens and how it actually works out. I'm going to show you something and where we're going to look at this and why within a marriage and how they want to go into a marriage based on conditions. You even have women that get ready to get married. They say, we're going to tell you what, and even with those traditional world, they'll say, hey, we're going to tell you what, we need to change the words in that marriage setup. Don't put I will obey. Don't put those. No, we can't have none of that there. This is a partnership. 100% partnership. I want to show you something, and let's see how we look at this. I want to see how we really see this. And we're going to go to Ephesians. I'm going to show you something in Ephesians. And we're going to go to Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to pick it up at verse 23. I'm going to show you something to where it says, wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands as unto the Lord. But watch it in verse 23. For the husband is the head of the wife. You see how he's defining the husband and a wife. So the husband is the head of the wife, comparing even Christ is the head of the body, head of the church. He's the savior of the whole body, period. And the structure is based on this, and you don't see where it says a male or a female, or it don't say man. husband, wife. As you see, it's not a partnership at all. It's a marriage. And based on that marriage, we have to fall in line with the marriage. But the problem is, and the reason why so many marriages have failed, so the reason why so many people have problems with marriage, is because they don't structure it this way. They want to go into it and they want to structure it a certain way. They want to structure it, okay, well, I want to tell you what, if you want to get married, I need to make sure this is happening, that happening, this happening, that happening, this happening. If not a happy wife, not a happy life. Interesting. Because they're going to base it on conditions. Because it's a partnership. It's not a marriage. See, a marriage is two becoming one. No matter what I showed it to, two becoming one. See, even in a partnership, and they coming in with a hyphenated name, you having a spiritual man in the house with a man. That's craziness. As if you want your father to run that house. That's craziness. You should leave your mother and father and cleave to that. But they want to go in there with this two names. So when they do that, and people say, well, I can do that. But you breaking God's covenant. And most people say, well, I can still do this and still get away with it. No, it's not the truth. You see, you can believe this all you want to based on things that happens. Based on things that happens to you, you believe it. And it's not the truth. And I'm going to show you this in Proverbs chapter 28. We're going to pick it up at verse 9. And we'll deal with that right there. It says, he that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, the covenant is with God. And you turn your ear away from that and you adjust it. You make sure you adjust it the way that you want to. See, and people say, well, I prayed and I prayed for this and I prayed for that and he did this. No, the devil will temporarily do stuff for you too, to keep you praying to him. But God is saying, if you turn your ear from hearing and doing what he wants you to do, he says, even your prayer should be an abomination. God don't sit there and give you things for abomination. Period. Well, I done prayed and the Lord done did this. Okay. He ran on the just as well as the unjust. Your prayer is a abomination to God. But you try to supersede the orders because you better than God. You're such and such. So people believe this. And people pump themselves up so much, they'll believe their own hype. And they'll believe that God is going to turn from what he actually saying. And he's going to benefit them because they are who they are. They need to be in the kingdom. So he's going to bend laws and everything to make sure they can get in there. He tells you, I despise your feast days. I will not smell your solemn assemblies. You turn from hearing what I'm telling you, and since you done turned from it, now you think that you truly is going to get these things? We done jack this up. We done put this in a bad situation. And it's telling you right here, it says the husband is the head of the wife, and even as Christ is the head of the body. And the same thing is, people will sit there and they'll say, well, and women sit there and still try to run stuff the way that they want. They'll still try to run stuff the way that they want. But just like I said, he don't change his order. Let's look at some of this and get a better understanding on why he don't change his order. We're going to go back to the law. We're going to look at the law And we're going to see what he's saying here. And we looked at this once before, but we're going to pick it up at verse 6. 30 and verse 6. And I want to show you how this actually works out. And we're going to go from verse 6, and it says, for if she had at all a husband, the husband is the head of the wife. And if she had a husband, and she vowed or uttered out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, including her husband heard it, and held his peace, in that day that he heard it, then, you see right there, then her vows should stand, and her bonds wherewith she had bound her soul should stand. You see, he's pretty clear. But you see, he's telling you this order that's going on with the man. This order that's happening with the man. The husband, if you make a vow and he hears it, okay, he's going to deal with him. Let me tie something to this. Make sure we clearly get this. We'll look at this in Hebrews and come back. We'll go to Hebrews chapter 7. We'll go down to 24. Help us understand some of this. The same is here. It says, but this man, because he continue forever, hath an unchangeable priesthood. Christ. Unchangeable. Unchangeable. I don't know what part we're missing here. It is unchangeable. And it says, wherefore he is able to save them to the utmost that cometh unto God by him. See, because you're going to come to God by him. That's why he said, can no man come to the Father except through him? Seeing he ever liveth to make intercessions for them. Christ. He's the head. That's why you can't come to Christ. You can't come to God unless you're going through him. The same as the woman here. So the women can sit there and say whatever they want to say. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change because now your prayer is even an abomination. Because you think that you had a power, you can do this, and oh no, he's going to hear me no matter. Okay, you got a problem. You have a problem. And people can sit there and they can tell you whatever. And you see this even here in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, little children, these things write unto you, that ye sin not. If any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, salvation of the anointed one, the righteous. The reason this is so, we have an advocate. And then the same thing is the man who's following Christ, they're supposed to follow him, and then you go in this pecking order. But women has taken on to where, no, I can do this my own, and I don't have to worry about no man. That's interesting. That's highly interesting. And she has a husband that's following Christ. She following Christ. But she said, no, I can run this. And we have a problem. Because it's saying her husband heard it and he held his peace. And then her vow should stand. Then, if he held his peace, only if he held his peace, then your vow going to stand. And her bond should be bound by her soul should stand. You see right here? But if her husband disallowed her that day that he heard it. Here we go again. If he disallowed it. The day that he heard it. Then he shall make her vow, which she vowed, including that she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect. Including the Spirit of God shall forgive her. All based on the man sitting there. No, Christ, no, we ain't gonna let it go down. He's not gonna talk to the man and say, hey, no, well, we're gonna talk about it. No, it's done. It's done. It's right there. It's done. There's nothing you can do to change it. But women believe that they can take this. This is why we have, and the crazy part is, you have many women is actually going to go into the lake of fire based on their belief that they can do things and they don't have to follow pecking orders. Because most of them think they will go above Christ. Same thing you hear women talk about, oh, well, what men lack, that's why women have to start preaching. You hear that quite a bit. Quite a bit you hear women say that. I done heard that many times. Well, men lack, so we had to pick up the pieces. We had to start. Okay. So you're saying God can't do his job. And it says, but every vow of a widow, including her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their soul, shall stand against her. You see that he's going to stand against her. Knowing or unknowing. If she knew what she was praying or she didn't know what she was praying, it's going to stand. But he gets better. It says, including if she vowed in her husband's house, problem again, or bound her soul by a bond and an oath. And he gets better here. We're going to see right here. It says, and her husband heard it and held his peace at her and disallowed her not, then her vow shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. Whether she knew what she was praying or not, he can care less. It's going to stand. But it tells you again, and he's not dealing with her based on if this man steps in. It says, but if her husband have utterly made them void, if the husband, who is the head of the wife, made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceeded out of her lips concerning her vow or concerning the bond of her soul shall not stand. You don't see where it's telling any other way that she can do this. That, okay, well, if he makes a bond with God, then then she can just, no, you don't see, it's not saying nothing about her. But it's saying it should stand. And he's going to tell you why. Her husband had made them void. And the Spirit of God shall forgive her. And we're going to see right here in verse 13. It says, every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it. The husband can establish it, or the husband make it void. Why? Because the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. He's not going to let you do cutsies. Oh, I'm going to go get in the front. That's not going to happen. And this is why the same thing, why it gets so important with women who saying, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hyphenate because I want to be equal. Okay. Disrespectful. The same thing, if you had a chance, you'll do Christ in fact, I'll show you another verse. And actually it's taught widely and badly. I get how some people try to run it, but it's taught badly and a lot of times. I'm going to show it to you. In 1 Corinthians in chapter 11. In chapter 11 in verse 3, it says this. It says, but I have you know that the head of every man, M-A-N, that's man or woman. The head of every man, M-A-N, let us make man in our image. And he made a male and a female. The head of every one of them is Christ, including the head of the woman. The spirit is the man. And the head of Christ is God. So we supposed to be able to control our own spirits within us to make sure we're not following this craziness. And the head of us is Christ, and Christ is under God. And to show you more so, to make sure we get this and understand it, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 22, most of us forget this. He says, in the rib which the Spirit of God had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. Brought it to both of them. You don't see a husband or wife there, do you? So we need to better understand how this is actually working out. As with pure and impure choices, in joining ourselves to these examples of females and things of that nature. Let's look at something. I want to show you something to help us out a little bit better. Is why this is so important, and why we got to understand how this is actually working out. In Deuteronomy chapter 22. In 22, and we're going to look at verse 13 and go down from there. And Moses recorded this. And it says, if a man take a wife and go unto her and hate her. He go into her and he hate her. This is what I want you to understand. He go into her and he hates her. Let me put something else up. I want to put something else up there. We're going to go to 23 over here to help us out. We're going to go to 23 right here. And it says, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She should be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, which a man should leave his father and his mother and should cleave unto his wife, and they should be one flesh. One. But he hate her. And if he given the occasion, it says this here, given the occasion, give the occasion to speak against her and bring an evil upon the way upon her, and say, I took this woman, when I came into her, I found her not a maid. We had this problem. Give an occasion of evil speech. She's supposed to be your friend and your companion. But you make a miss. Interesting. The reason why we're following the same thing is what Adam did. In Genesis chapter 3, and picking it up at verse 12, when he asked him the question about why you hid and what have you eaten of the tree, Adam said this. And he said, the woman whom thou givest to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I did eat. It's not that evil. So what you're saying is God don't know how to give a good gift. That's what we're saying. He don't know how to give a good gift. He put this woman in our care to where it can guide us and help us out. But we saying right up front, No, we can't do it. So verse 15, it says this, then shall the father of the damsel and the mother should take and bring forth the tokens. See, this is where our problem at. This is where our problem at. This right here. The tokens of the damsel virginity. This is where the issues are. Because you're going to bring them forth. So we got to look at this all together. So the token is what we keying in on. So he brought forth the token. In that token was a cloth. The covering. That's all it was. It was a cloth. It was a covering. And we're going to be seeing all this there. Because you can see right down here when you look at verse 17, you just highlight just that part right there. It says, and they should spread the cloth before the elders. So that's the covering that we should have been under. But as soon as we do something incorrectly, we do something jacked up, the first thing we do, we put blame. We put blame. And they take the tokens out. And unto the elders of the gate, and the damsel of the father should say unto the elders, I have gave my daughter unto this man to wife. And he hate her. He hate her. This is where we have a problem with our spirits. Because most times we run into these issues and we be hated because of who you're tied to or who you're not tied to. If you're not friends with them and you sit there and you see things differently, you can become an enemy. In John chapter 5 and verse 18, if the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. So why are we going to sit there and trip? Because it's going to find an occasion to speak evil. It's going to find an occasion to speak evil against you. Given occasion to speak evil, and found my daughter not a maid, and these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they spread out the cloth, this covering. They put out this covering. And then the elders of the city take the man and they chasing him because he was lying. He was straight lying. And it tells you when you have made that deal with Christ, it says, and they shall immerse him 100 shekels of silver and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he had wrought upon evil the way upon the virgin of Israel, Christ. We done brought an evil thing upon Christ, saying Christ had me to do it. Christ told me to say this. Christ told me to tell you this. I'm do this way. I'm going to hyphenate this way. I'm going to do this because I'm going to stand on my own. Bringing up upon the evil, upon the pureness of Israel. And she shall be his wife, that he may not put her away all his days. This is why a lot of us are going to go to hell. Because once you make that conscious choice and you doing all this evil, all you doing is putting yourself in a deeper grave. This is all a lot of us is doing. So the thing is to look at what we can do between what we have done. So what can we do to rectify some of this? What can we do to actually work this out? There's actually an answer to this. And you see the answer is hidden, and it's in Sirach chapter 13, picking up with verse 18. And just to show you the similarity between the two, in 13 and 18, it tells us this. It says, what agreement is there between a hyena and a dog? What agreement is between these? And what peace between the rich and the poor? They both live independent of each other. Both live independent of each other. The hyena and the dog, they both wow. But they're looking for equal in power in percentages and numbers. So if it has 60 dogs and 20 hyenas within the partnership in the wilderness, who carries the most weight? The dog. If the hyena has 60 hyenas and only 20 dogs, who carries the weight? The hyena. The partnership is based on rulership, powers, and strength. What do the rich have in common with the poor? The rich want to get richer, the poor they're gonna make the poor poor. This is why we have these problems. This is why we will continually go through, and this is why so many of us is actually going to miss the kingdom based on, because no matter what, we're going to always go back to our own way of thinking. And same as it was said, even in the Matrix, said once you even get over this teaching, you start to immediately start feeling better already. But you got to remember one thing: nothing changes, absolutely nothing. And as it said right here in Ephesians chapter 5, picking back up at verse 23, he tells us right up here. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. That'll never change. I don't care what you do. Ever change. And never forget this. And same thing is, we're going to look at this here, because there's no agreements here. And we're going to look at this in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 in verse 33. In verse 33, it's telling you right up here. It says, but he that is married careth for things that are of the world, that he may please his wife. This is key. So the difference between the wife and the husband that he marries to please her. So we got to look at this in closing. No man should be sitting there dangling a partnership, a prenuptial agreement, the same as with the wife. Because it tells you in 35, it says, there's a difference between a wife and a virgin. An unmarried woman care for the things of the Creator, that she may be separated both in body and in spirit. But she that is married cares for things of the world, which is for her husband, and that she may please her husband. So she shouldn't be dangling no partnerships, no prenuptial agreements, and no hyphenations. Because other than that, it's just a partnership. As he said in Genesis in 35 and verse 10, he said, thy name will be no more Jacob, but Israel. So we need to understand this and get to understanding with these hyphenations on what people do. So the same thing, if women, they seek hyphenations. They're seeking a hyphenation. I really want you to pay attention to what's going to go on there with women. if you're seeking a hyphenation, and what you need to understand on that within itself. So just to go back and just to look at this a little bit closer as we closing out this, I want you to remember Ruth. I want you to remember the words of Ruth in chapter 1, verse 16. Chapter 1, and we'll see what she recorded there. And she said, entreat me not to leave thee. The comforter don't want to leave, but somebody want to leave. It says, where thou goest, I go. Where thou lodge, I lodge. Thy people shall be my people. Your God, my God. So if you're seeking the hyphenations and all this stuff like that, and plan on getting married, then you're more logical. It makes more sense for you just to get a prenuptial agreement or get you a limited liability partnership corporation. Makes more sense. Because then both you can have managing partners based on percentage. God is not joined to those like that. So I don't care how people still try to flip it any kind of way they want to. But the outline of a partnership, by means of who makes the decision, decides the partnership type and 50% this, and who gonna pay for this, who gonna do this, those are partnerships. Creating partnerships, determine the partner's obligation, who pays what, and how much they pay. So if you get married under God, the rule is the same. You join as one. That's it. It's not sitting there saying, okay, let me see what I can do here and what I can do there. It's a marriage. It's one. And never forget this. And I'm going to send you these last two. Actually, I'm going to put it here so we can see it. In 2 Samuel, well, we're going to look at 1 Samuel, chapter 2 and verse 6. The Spirit of God killeth and maketh alive. He bring down to the grave and he bringeth up. I want you to keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. In what he does, can't no man separate. Can't no man separate this. And this is what we got to remember as we go through. So you have a lot of people going to always tell you, oh, well, I have to do it this way, I have to do it that way. And I do it for business purposes, then the best thing you should do is not get married. Because it says, wherefore, there are no more twain. See, you're not two, but one flesh. What therefore God have joined together, let no man put asunder. Can no man separate it? So the marriage is with Christ. You're no longer two. No longer hyphenation. No reason to get a prenup. No reason to do an agreement or anything else. So hopefully with that, everybody got to understand it. I see, but I know some people they screwed up because they really believe that even though we saying a partnership is not ordained by God, but if I even did it, they'll still sit there and say we said it. We said yeah. The reason why, because they deaf in the ears. Because even as we showed at the beginning, we showed the video. You see a couple of people still sit there and said, yes. Oh, yeah, he said it. He never said it. But it just goes to show you how when people don't want to hear the truth, that's kind of how they work. So hopefully with that, everybody got some understanding from that. And with this here, as we continually look forward at it, you see over there where you got Sanders, Walsh, and Beard, you don't know who's who and who's controlling what. But when you look at the marriage, that's one. You see how it goes, and it's just you see all those people under one firm. Period. You don't have to look for who's who. You don't have to look for who's what. You don't have to look what position. You don't have to look who's having what kind of control. You know what the control is. It's conquering. 100% clear. 100% clear. So we don't want to go through and look at these things in another way. So hopefully that you guys got some understanding from it. And I say until you guys until next time. To each and every person, shalom.